Hello, and welcome to Joline Knits A Lot. This is my show about knitting and crafting and all the things that I've been getting up to, or haven't been getting up to. The last couple weeks I haven't had as much time to craft, or at least I haven't had the energy to craft. I don't know if I'm just having those February blahs where you don't feel like picking things up, you just feel the need to rest and recover and take some quiet time. So I feel like I haven't really been crafting as much as I usually do. However, I do have some things to share with you today. Today I'm wearing my Felix pullover. Sometimes I forget to tell you what I'm wearing, but this is my Felix pullover. It's a really clever pullover with raglan increases that are done with yarn overs. So there's a lacy detail at the shoulders. You can see one here and one here. Mine is knit out of Brooklyn tweed shelter. I think this is the raspberry jam colorway, but I could be wrong. And it's just a cozy kind of sweatshirty kind of sweater that I like to wear on days like today that are cold, a little windy, a little snowy at times, variable weather that we get here in Alberta. All times of the year, but in the winter particularly, you could get a mix of things in one day. So what have I been working on? I have one finished object to show you, and then I have some things that I've just been sort of chipping away at. So the finished object is a pair of socks that I started, and I think I showed you last time. These are a pair of work socks by Leo and Roxy. Leo and Roxy are some yarn dyers out of Ontario in Canada. And these are their work socks. The pattern comes with the kit. And each kit has a 100-gram skein of this beautiful marled yarn, which I think is perfect for these work socks. You get a 20-gram skein of the cream color. The pattern includes a partridge heel, eye of partridge heel. And then you also get a 10-gram skein of a contrast color for the stripe. And they have many different contrast colors available. This one is called Tell Me All Your Secrets, I think. And it was the kit was a birthday gift from a friend of mine. So I'm glad to have these done and off the needles. And I'm also happy to report that for my size, I wear about a size 8 shoe in most in most footwear, and I was able to get a whole pair of socks, and I have enough to make another pair in my size. This pair of socks has a 3x1 ribbing across the top, which I think was easier to see when they were on the blockers, and up the leg of the sock. And I didn't love knitting the ribbing. It wore on me after a while. And so I think if I were to knit another pair of these, I would just make them plain stockinette and still do the contrast stripes and toes and heel. And I do have enough to make another pair exactly like these, which is good because I have a feeling that my daughter might be stealing these. Speaking of socks that my daughter's going to steal, I have another half-finished object to show you. I started a pair of socks once those work socks were off the needles. Partly just because I like to have some plain knitting for when I'm on the go. And in the last couple of weeks, that meant watching soccer games or watching my daughter dance. So it's nice just to have something that can keep your hands busy that you don't have to look at. So I cast on a plain sock and I knit a heel flap and gusset and a toe, all in the same color. I can't even remember the last time I did that. And didn't include a contrast color anywhere. But this is the first sock that I have finished. Again, this is just a plain sock, and there's lots of sock patterns out there. I won't bore you with the details, but I use 64 stitches, and I use 2.25 millimeter needles. This yarn I got at the Edmonton Fiber Frolic in the fall. It's called zebra sock yarn because certain parts of the skein are just plain white and dyed, speckled in this case. And some parts of the skein have this really lovely black and white marling effect. And so you get these zebra stripes. which I guess is taking advantage of pooling that we see with variegated yarns. But in this case, it's actually the yarn itself and not the dyeing. This is Zebra Sock. It's dyed by Sea Turtle Fiber Arts, who's another yarn dyer out of Calgary, Alberta. Calgary has a lot of independent dyers, which is great. And the colorway is called Freckle Juice. And as you can see, it's got these tiny little bright speckles. And my younger daughter has already basically admitted that she wants these socks, which is great. I'm happy to knit them for her if she wears them. And again, it's just nice to have something plain stockinette on the needles. I have used up a good portion of this skein on the first sock, so I should have plenty for the second sock, and then I think whatever I have left will probably go into my crochet blanket that I have been picking up and working on here and there. Not regularly, but at least once a week I'll sit down and work on that crochet blanket. And I'm not going to show it to you all the time because, again, that'll get boring. It's going to take me a long time to finish that crochet blanket. But I have been making progress and I'm over half done, so that's exciting. And that, again, is just a plain Jane top-down sock with heel flap and gusset. I think actually I was inspired by those work socks to do an eye of partridge heel on this one as well, but it's difficult to tell in the yarn. And actually I found that the work sock ones, the pattern doesn't show up very well until it's stretched out, like on the sock blockers. Oh, so maybe let's block it and see. Since I'm low on content this week, we can take the time to block a sock. Ta-da! That eye of partridge heel is lost a little bit in the stripes, but that's okay. It was just nice to knit something different. But I really like the socks, and I think my daughter will like them too. And I have one other project that I have been working on steadily most days, I think, and that is the Tsubaki pullover sweater. This was a sweater that I think was mostly inspired by the yarn and a trip to the Fiber Nook. I found this yarn, it's really beautiful, and I think that was really what inspired this pattern. I'm using I'm all tangled up. I'm using the Walcott yarns opus, which is merino and alpaca. And I'll just show you what the skein looks like. It's a really drapey and soft yarn, creating a beautiful, again, soft and drapey fabric. And I'll show you the progress that I have made. I think when last we spoke, had I been working on the sleeve? I don't recall. It's a top-down sweater with cables only in the front and stockinette through the rest of the sweater. The really clever thing about the construction of this sweater is you knit from the top down and you create saddle shoulders, which I think are maybe easier to see from the back. You can see this shaping where you increase here, and then those increases turn into the sleeve. So what happens is you knit this sweater, you start at the neckline, you knit down to where the armpits divide, and then you knit the sleeve back and forth. So you knit and you purl. It's been a while since I knit anything back and forth. Often I'm knitting things in the round. So you knit back and forth until you get to the cuff. You knit some ribbing at the cuff. You bind off the stitches, but not all the stitches. You leave one on the needle, and then you pick up a bunch of stitches down the sides of the sleeve, and you create a zipper seam. Now I'm not going to give you all the details because this is a paid for pattern and it's incredibly clever, and I think the designer deserves all the credit for this clever way of creating a sleeve seam, and that goes right up to the armpit. I just think it's so smart. The one thing that I will say though is that if your sleeve, if your arm is not the size that is sort of fits the model in this case. If it doesn't fit the pattern exactly, it may be a little bit tricky to adjust the length of the sleeve. You certainly couldn't do it after you've knit the sleeve. You have to do it while you're knitting the sleeve. It's not impossible. You can space out the increases or the decreases, sorry, for the sleeve more if you know that you would like a longer sleeve. But I would caution you to just be aware that the sleeves would be difficult to adjust after you've, not even difficult, it would be impossible to adjust the length of the sleeve after you've knit the sweater. The only way you could do it would be to pick up some stitches at the ribbing and knit more ribbing. Having said that, I think that if you are really interested in how sweaters are made and new construction techniques, this sweater I think would be really, really interesting for you. So for me, with my short arms, this is going to be just fine. I've got plenty of room in the sleeves. And now I'm at the point where I'm just knitting down the body. The pattern suggests you do so many pattern repeats of this center cable, and I'll just keep going until it looks like it's an appropriate length for me. I'll probably measure a few times. I'm hoping that the way that this sweater fits is like a cozy sweatshirt. It's just beautiful, and the way that some of the pictures of already finished projects look have me looking forward to wearing this sweater. I think it'll be great in the spring with a pair of like jeans or jean shorts. As just something you can throw on over top. I'm really happy with this pattern and the marriage of the pattern and the yarn. Sometimes patterns knit in the right yarn really, really sing. Maybe not sing, but the right yarn can really bring out a lot of the beauty of a pattern, and I feel like this yarn does. And that is all the things I have on my needles this week. But there is one more thing that I wanted to share with you. Recently, my husband has started printing things with his 3D printer again, and we have come up with a model of a 3D printed sock machine based on the designs of other very clever makers. And I've been cranking sock tubes again. Originally, my first 3D printed sock machine worked, but it was frustrating. It had its faults. And the design of it, I think, is not as efficient maybe as my current model. So I'm not going to get into all the specifics of 3D printed sock machines or sock machines in general, because not everybody's interested in it. But basically there's two types. There's one where the yarn spins around the needles, and there's one where the yarn stays put and the needles spin to meet the yarn. That is a very, very basic way of, I guess, dividing up the different kinds of sock machines. So the first kind of sock machine that we printed was one where the yarn carrier spun around the needles. And it had its issues. So my husband was game to try making the other kind where the needles spin and the yarn carrier stays put. So I have been busy and I have cranked out a few sock tubes. These little cakes of sock tubes really make me happy. The machine that we have printed off has room for 76 needles. So it creates a 76 stitch sock tube. The gauge that it is happy to be knitting at is about 8 stitches per inch, which I think is a pretty good gauge for knitted socks. And so I'm creating currently tubes that when they're finished and not stretched, like these ones, measure about 4.5 inches across. So that means they're 9 inches in circumference. And they seem to be a good size for my husband's foot. My husband wears a size 11 shoe. He doesn't have a small foot for a man, but he doesn't have a huge foot for a man. Sort of an average man's foot, I guess. Anyway, I have been cranking tubes. A lot of these were trial and error, just to see if I could get the machine working and what settings worked well on it. But I'm happy to report that I am cranking out sock tubes. So now I have here 4 pairs of socks. It's difficult to see them all, rolled up as they are, but enough tubes to make 4 sets of socks. So now my job is going to be turning these tubes into socks. And if you like, I can show you how I do that on a different video for those people who are interested. And the next project for my husband is to make me a machine for 64 stitches, or a lady's size, I guess a smaller sized foot. We have been playing around with the machine that we have, and because it's made of essentially plastic, that's how 3D printers work, is they melt essentially a plastic to create the pieces that you're making. So because it's plastic, it doesn't hold up well to having screws in and out and in and out all the time. And in order to change the size of tube that you're making, you would have to remove 4 screws, insert a different cylinder that holds a different number of needles, and then screw it back in. Because it's plastic, the screwing in and out all the time is wearing down on the plastic. So he said, why don't we just make you another machine? So I have another machine in the works, one that will make a 64 stitch tube. And again, at 8 inches or 8 stitches per inch, that should create about an 8-inch sock tube. Is that right? Yes, I think that's right. So 8 stitches per inch, an 8-inch tube. And those ones should fit my feet. So what I was thinking I would do, if you're interested, is create a separate video on how we, like all the different parts that we have printed and how we assemble and then use a 3D sock machine. So look forward to that in the future. I think there's just a few pieces left to print, and then I'll be assembling my machine. So I will, on that video, I'll give you all the information about where we got the files for the 3D printed sock machine, and how we've printed it and how we assemble it. But anyway, I will be creating some socks out of these tubes. Some of these are for gifts. This rainbow yarn has someone in mind already. And then some of the other tubes here were mostly just for trial and error. However, I will be making socks out of them, especially since my husband has worn through a couple pairs recently and is due for some more socks. And actually, one of the pairs he's been wearing a lot lately, I cranked on my old machine. So that says to me they fit him well and he likes them. So there's a market, even if it's just my husband, for 3D printed socks cranked on my 3D printed sock machine. And that is all I have to share with you today. In the next couple weeks, I hope to get more energy to be knitting and crafting some more. Maybe I'll turn some of these tubes into socks, who knows. But in the meantime, I'm just going to enjoy puttering around on the projects I have on my needles and taking time to rest. Everybody needs time to rest from season to season and time to time. I hope that you find time to refill your heart, refill your cup, to take time to nourish yourself and listen to your body when it needs to rest. And that's what I'm trying to do right now. So in the next couple of weeks, I hope you find time to do those things. I plan on knitting. Maybe not a lot. Who knows? I look forward to seeing you again in a couple of weeks. Take care.